Hey, my brothers and sisters in the Lord, welcome to the Catholic Citizen, episode 9. As today we're talking about this country's chaos, the Georgia elections, and maybe much, much more in just a minute. All right, friends, well, welcome back to the show. My name is Peter Range. I'm your host here at the Catholic Citizen and excited to jump in with you with episode 9 today as we're covering what happened in D.C. this past week around the country with this week's Catholic news. But before we do that, we've got to pay the bills. And so I invite you, if you're able to, help us continue the great work here, go to awakencatholic.org/donate and even just pitch in the cost of coffee on a monthly basis or weekly basis. That could be a tremendous help and boon to us here at the Catholic Citizen Show. Secondly, the app is just absolutely fantastic. So check out the app. There's all this premium content, and there's going to be an upgrade as we've upgraded the studios, as you can see here as well, coming soon. And there's going to be premium content where you're going to be able to interact a lot more with the shows. Lastly, I want to invite you, if you have any cleaning needs whatsoever here in Northwest Ohio, go to Casabella. They're the best place if you need, whether that's your home cleaned or your commercial residence, whatever it may be, especially during this time of COVID, all the little spaces, they'll make sure they take care of it, whether that's doorknobs or, whatever it is. Casabella would take care of it. I invite you to go to their website, check them out. They're great, tremendous people, and being great, tremendous people, they'll do a great, tremendous job cleaning your home or office. So please patron our great patrons here at the Catholic Citizen. All right, this week's show. A lot of people have been talking about what's taking place in Washington, D.C., obviously in the chaos which ensued in our nation's capital. It caps an entire year of what has been, in a lot of different ways, chaos in our nation. But I want us to keep a perspective here on what is kind of going on in many different ways with the media and the way the media acts nowadays, with the way that our country is just simply going. So first, let me just say this. We cannot lose sight of the fact that the chaos in this nation fundamentally is the fact that we abort nearly 3,000 unborn children every single day. That's the real chaos going on in this nation. The fact that we're killing off the next generation of boys and girls in our nation. And we're not doing it systematically like through the government. We're doing it to ourselves, through our own personal choice. So we need to wake up. And, the media and the way that it works, I just had Nathan Maurer on my radio show yesterday, Say Yes to Life on Annunciation Radio. And we were going over how the clickbait works in media today, how the media headlines just become completely outlandish to make people click on more things. And so, we see that a lot, whatever the news story might be. But what happened in D.C. maybe deserves some of those headlines, because it was complete chaos there at the U.S. Capitol, and certainly not expected. So unless you were on retreat or completely under rock, not watching what was going on, after the Save America rally there in D.C., which President Trump spoke at, individuals from that rally went to the U.S. Capitol, stormed the U.S. Capitol. It left 70 protesters, I believe, arrested, 56 officers injured. One officer late Thursday night actually dead now, and 4 protesters dying from injuries, including one, Ashley Babbitt, who's an Air Force veteran who was shot in the neck and killed as she tried to get deeper into the Capitol building. I unfortunately saw the shooting on a video on Twitter, and it's just absolutely awful and tragic. It's an unprecedented event in our country, and Congress was stopped for a brief time when they were certifying the presidential election results. Friends, this cannot happen in the United States of America. I was going to go over the timeline of what President Trump tweeted and when he tweeted it. I invite you to go to the USA Today website. They kind of go over the list of events and the calendar of events, how they kind of went down. I encourage you to do that. That'll kind of straighten out some of the misconceptions that are out there, if you will, in the media about what was said, what was not said. And we'll put that up on the website of the Catholic Citizen for you to check out. But look, let me just say a few things about this event. Number one, if you've listened to me here at the Catholic Citizen, you know that I have some serious qualms about what did or did not happen on election night and following. But let me make something abundantly clear. Fixing those issues that happened with the election will not be resolved by breaking into the U.S. Capitol and disrupting Congress, which is a flagrant disregard for the rule of law. And it's led to individuals losing their lives, including a police officer. Okay? These deaths are by far the greatest tragedies from this Wednesday. The fact that 4 people died that didn't have to because the Capitol building was charged and overtaken. Number 2, look, I'm a fan of civil disobedience, employed the best by the likes of Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement. And like I mentioned, though, during the Black Lives Matters protests and riots this past summer, civil disobedience cannot include the harming of civilians or police officers, or the destruction or taking of any property, including the halls of Congress. Number 3, words matter. You know, my father taught me that, and we can see that in the fight over language today, which is just so incredibly prevalent, whether it was, you know, the fight over the marriage debate, or now as Nancy Pelosi wants to do in the House, she wants to remove any gender-specific terms. So terms like mother, father, son, daughter, grandma, grandpa. Nancy Pelosi doesn't think we should be allowed to say those words in Congress. So words really matter. But words really matter if you're the president of the United States of America. So when President Trump throws Mike Pence under the bus, for example, you know, on his Twitter account, the day of everything going on, when people start charging the Capitol and whatnot, when he says things at the rally like, you are never going to take back the country by weakness, he has to understand how his words, and I know in other parts he said, you know, we want to go there and peacefully protest. And so he said those things too. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say one thing and then the other thing just claim, well, all I said was this. He has to understand, and he hasn't understood for, a few years now, ever since he became famous with his Twitter account, that words have consequences. And when he tells his protesters again at this rally that you're never going to take the country back by weakness, he has to understand how his words can inflame an already upset electorate and an already fired up crowd some of whom traveled the country. Ashley, who lost her life traveling from California. So President Trump failed to lead in this circumstance. And unfortunately, it led to the death of 4 people, again, including a Capitol police officer. Number 4, that brings me just to a question about this event. Why in the world was the Capitol not secure? With 2/3 of the governing body of the country present to certify the results of the presidential election, the vice president there presiding over the ceremonies. Why was the Capitol Hill not more secure? What in the world is going on? Especially with all the protesters that were going to be there that day. It's absolutely inexcusable. Number 5, and while I know, as some of you have shared with me, that the Washington Post published a story, it's still up there, despite CNN fact-checking it and saying, well, they took it down. Well, they changed different aspects of the story, but the Washington Post published a story saying that they could verify that there was Antifa protesters in the midst of the crowd there. And, situations like this, of course, there's going to be instigators and individuals who are looking to take advantage of this certain situation. And if you just believe mainstream media, CNN and otherwise, to say there's no way that they're there, okay, then you have to check yourself a little bit, okay? But the Washington Post said there was Antifa protesters there. They said there was facial recognition technology that confirmed that. The facial recognition company came back and said, look, take it down. We didn't say that. Okay, so they had to remove that story, but they left up saying that there was other sources confirming that there was Antifa protesters who were there. Now, that being said, you can't blame the entire day on Antifa protesters, okay? There was Trump supporters who went into the Capitol. There's Trump supporters engaged in this. The president himself was at the rally. The language that was used at the rally, in many ways, was incredibly not helpful. So you cannot blame Antifa for what happened at the Capitol. We must believe in the rule of law in this nation. And for those of us who believe in, conservative policies, whether that's the right to life, the sacredness of marriage and the family, lower taxes, a free economy, a free and fair press, a strong national defense, backing those police officers, it is incumbent upon us who believe in those conservative principles, who believe in those traditional values, to live in such a manner that will draw people up to our best nature. Yesterday, it took us down to our worst nature as a country. So what happened on Wednesday, leaving 4 people dead, overshadowed much of the good that has been done, even in the pro-life movement in the past 4 years. Number 7, look, I know that a lot of people have said, well, look, what's been happening all summer? Look at all the riots and protests, and the media's got a double standard. Well, of course the media has a double standard. But just because other people do something wrong, it doesn't give you license to do something wrong, okay? So other people who riot and loot doesn't mean you should riot and loot. Other people who use incendiary language doesn't mean you should use incendiary language. Because other people threaten doesn't mean you should threaten. Look, President Trump has his good qualities, and he has some good policies that have been helpful for the nation. But these past couple of weeks, his worst qualities have been on display, including the call that was made to the leaders in the Georgia government, talking about finding me 11,000 votes. Look, I hope moving forward, the conservative movement will fight as hard as President Trump has in many ways, but they'll do it with the grace and statesmanship of of the Vice President, Mike Pence, or Tim Scott of South Carolina. They've been men that, have shown us how to lead. But unfortunately, President Trump, he threw Mike Pence under the bus. Wednesday, certainly a tragic day for this nation. And I hope it's not a day that we ever have to see ever again. Lastly, I just wanted to cover real quick the Georgia elections, because buried under all this chaos was the fact that now the Democratic Party has control of both the House, the Senate, and the White House. So politicians who have a majority pro-abortion voting record, an anti-religious liberty voting record, now have control of the Congress and of the government. I just want to look at one individual who's now going to be a senator in Georgia, and that is Pastor Raphael Warnock. He is the pastor actually at Martin Luther King Jr.'s church there in Atlanta. And, it breaks my heart that he won this election. And it does so because he is an adamant abortion rights supporter. So the man who preaches from the pulpit, the same pulpit that Martin Luther King Jr. inspired the country from, to share that every human person has equal dignity under the law, you now have a pastor from that same church who's now a senator of the United States of America, who proudly put on his Twitter account, "I'm a pro-choice pastor," who believes that abortion rights are a fundamental human right, supports abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. A man who believes in the word of God, who should know passages like Jeremiah 1:5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," or passages like Psalm 139, "I knit you together in your mother's womb," or passages like Luke chapter 2, where the infant in the womb of Elizabeth, John the Baptist, leaps at the sound of Mary, the mother of God. But those passages to Pastor Raphael Warnock, they don't mean a thing, because he's been blinded by some evil force which makes him think and believe that the word of God can somehow justify the shedding, the death of innocent blood. Although one of the 10 commandments, mind you, in Exodus 20, Pastor, is thou shalt not murder. He's now a senator in the United States. Look, he's coming from a state. Let me just read you this just for a second. The black community in the state of Georgia represents 32% of the state's population, but they shockingly represent 69% of all abortions statewide. So that means for every 1,000 black babies, African-American babies born alive in Georgia in 2019, 413 African-American babies were tragically murdered at the hands of abortionists and with the support of Pastor Raphael Warnock. Friends, Wednesday was a day of chaos in this nation. But today, there will be 2,700 unborn children ripped apart in the womb. Today is also a day of chaos in our nation. It's time we wake up to it. It's time we fight for life. We'll see you next week on The Catholic Citizen.
This show and all media on Awaken Catholic is made possible by the Awaken Nation and the Hallow app. The Awaken Nation is a community of people like you who support all things Awaken for as cheap as a cup of coffee a week and get access to exclusive content. Learn more by visiting awakencatholic.org/donate. Hallow is the only audio-guided Catholic prayer app focused on contemplative prayer and traditional Catholic meditation such as Lectio Divina, Daily Examen, and the Rosary. We here at Awaken all use Hallow every day and love it. To learn more or give it a try, visit hallow.app/awaken.